Okay, so I was cut off in the last video. It's not because he told them by swords and they didn't know what to do with it, because they knew about the Old Testament, okay, and they knew that he was the root and offspring of David, right? The Messiah. They said, whose son is the Messiah? The son of David. And he says, no, then why does he say, my Lord said to my Lord? And he's citing some scripture that says that David is calling the Messiah Lord and not his son, okay, and not saying he's going to be his son. He's calling him Lord. He's there already, right? And so the Messiah is the son of God. Okay, so he knew that he's the son of David in terms of the same spirit, okay, the offspring, and they knew it was connected there, okay, and they knew that Jesus was connected to David, right, the character in the story, which is superimposed on me, okay, and that they were right to think in terms of martial arts, right? And notice they have sword and not armor. He didn't say go buy armor and a horse and get armor for the horse. He said here's two swords. And they didn't find that out of the ordinary at all, especially because he was dodging people when they were trying to stone him to death and grab him and force him off the cliff and so on and so forth. Okay, so where were we here? All right. Okay, now this part is very key. What's going on here, it happens next, is very key. A lot of people can twist it. Pay close attention. All right, and one struck the servant of the high priest, cut off his right ear. Right, his ability to be smart enough to listen and obey God. In this ending time, it must be through me. But Jesus answered, no more of this, and he touched the man's ear and healed him. Right, so he said, I want this person to be able to hear the message and to have a chance to be redeemed. Okay, he said that's why he's here at that time. It was humbling himself, right? The spirit of humbling yourself to try to reason with people. That's not what's supposed to happen here. That's not what's happening here. I'm not supposed to be humble. Okay, the sword of scripture, right? See Revelation 19. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. No one else is doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're all worshiping the devil. Anyway, then Jesus said to the chief priests, the officers of the temple guard, and the elders who had come for him, am I leading a rebellion that you have come with swords and clubs? Every day I was with you in the temple courts, and you did not lay a hand on me. But this is your hour when darkness reigns. He said, look at what destiny would tell you. Okay? Listen to what God has told you by what has occurred here and the deeper message, not some face value brute fool's, conception, not some warthog's conception, not a jackal or a hippo's or a boar's conception. Okay? Not a bully's conception. Not a corrupt cop or corrupt military person's conception. Not good cop, bad cop psychology trying to work together to control people and the conceptions that they propound. Okay? But what is the deeper message here? He said, you people live by the dark side. You relying on your flesh. Okay, here you are with swords and clubs, and there's no rebellion taking place. Right, here they are raising the military and the police and everything on me, and there's not a bunch of armed people saying, hey, let's take over, guys, or something. It is clear that what I'm doing is right. And they're moving in the spirit of darkness. This is who they are. This is who their forefathers are. Their nations are. All the nations of the world. This is who their religions are. This is who they are to their core of their heart. When their heart has been tested at the most important time in history, this is who they are, the darkest darkness. And this is their hour. This is their period of time when darkness reigns and the foolishness of sending themselves and their offspring to hell is unfolding. Not a speck of worthwhile life among all of them combined. Peter disowns Jesus. Then seizing him, they led him away and took him into the house of the high priest. Peter followed at a distance. And when some there had a kindled fire in the middle of the courtyard and had sat down together, Peter sat down with them. A servant girl saw him seated there in the firelight. She looked closely at him and said, this man was with him. But he denied it. Woman, I don't know. He said, a little later, someone else saw him and said, you are also one of them. Man, I am not, Peter replied. About an hour later, another asserted, certainly this fellow was with him, for he is a Galilean. Peter replied, man, I don't know what you're talking about. Just as he was speaking, the rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word the Lord had spoken to him, before the rooster crows, today you will disown me 3 times, right? And we'll see how the number 3 comes into play with Pilate and him trying to reason with the crowd. The 3rd day. So the numbers are part of the Bible, but it's part of a puzzle. There are patterns in nature that these things are, significant of, But the Bible doesn't do a good job to, in organizing and putting it in perspective. They put in a puzzle piece, and it's for a bunch of Satanists to, who aren't being sabotaged, who are allowed to have a group to come together and say, hey, look what we know, and tree of knowledge, and da-da-da, instead of living a righteous life, walking in the light in the way of righteousness along the path of justice, and being a light of justice by your life. They're just saying, oh, look how much we know about the Bible, and we speak Hebrew, and we went to this college and got this degree, and so on and so forth. Okay. Where was I here? And he went outside and wept bitterly. The guards mocked Jesus. Now remember, this part's key. When I first read the Bible, the first many times I read this chapter, I didn't quite connect the two. You're kind of immersed in the story, and you don't kind of think back and say, why are they mocking him? What the hell's their problem, right? Haven't they heard this, that, and the other thing? It has to do with them saying, who came to take away Jesus? A bunch of soldiers, right? They're cops and military types and intelligence agencies. They're like, let's find this guy. They're working together. Like, there he is, right? Judas had betrayed him. He said, there he is. They're all there with their chests puffed out. And he said, why do you have swords and clubs? Why are you looking for a fight when I'm not here with a bunch of guys ready to fight you? Or that's not my and that's not my intention. But this is who you are. You're darkness. You're cheaters. You're team up on them. You're heartless. You don't see them man to man. It's who you are. This isn't David and Goliath here. You're like, we're all taking you on, and we're going to fume and poison you because we want people to think that we know what we're doing, right? It's fucking retarded. You see what I'm saying? Dumb and dumber than that, right? Intelligence, police, military, whatever order is appropriate. I'm just going to keep, instead of pinpointing, that explanation of which group's worse than which, let's just keep going. Okay, you get the idea. So why did the guards mock Jesus? Because he said that they're bullies and knuckleheads and that they're void of the Spirit of God. And he's saying he's the Son of God, which puts him way above, Pilate, Caesar, the whole world put together. You see what I'm saying? And that is what I am. I am that I am. The men who were guarding Jesus began mocking and beating him. They blindfolded him and demanded, prophesy, who hit you? And they said many other insulting things to him. Okay, see how it's provoking you, right? It's mocking you, right? And that's what's been going on here. They've been using technology to cause me physical pain, fuming and poison, cause me physical pain, and they've been mocking me and provoking me and sexually harassing me. And of course, these are LGBT Romans, right? They're plugging kids, they're having sex with kids and other men and so on and so forth. These guys do not like Christianity. Jesus before Pilate and Herod. At daybreak, the council of the elders of the people, both the chief priests and the teachers of the law, met together, and Jesus was led before them. If you are the Messiah, they said, tell us. Jesus answered, if I tell you, you will not believe me. And if I asked you, you would not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God. They all asked, are you then the Son of God? He replied, you say that I am. Their actions had said, right? Then they said, why do we need any more testimony? We have heard it from his own lips. And notice he said, this is also why the guards mocked him. They caught wind that he was making this argument, and they had their own pagan and occult way of thinking that allowed them to think in terms of the tree of knowledge enough to figure out what he was saying because he was speaking their language. Okay, in many ways he had engaged the occult system, and that was key in why he's speaking in this mystery way as part of the story. Again, I still don't like the story of the Bible. It takes far too much analysis to preach a moral code, and nobody's being moral. And you don't need you don't try to teach a kindergarten kid, calculus when they haven't learned their, times tables and so on and so forth. Okay. And of course, it's unnecessary to do it in a puzzle way. So it's an unnecessary calculus, if you will. Okay, so he had said, but from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God. So he says he's above everyone and be seated at the right hand of God. And before he had even been taken into custody, he said, I'm going to be taken into custody and I'll suffer many things. So they knew that he was a wise man who knew what he was doing. They might not have known. Their spies might have told him, and Judas might have told him. They might have known, they might not have known. But they knew that he was a wise man, and he outmaneuvered them. And they were kind of big, fools in armor, were like brutes, and they felt belittled. Now, it's petty, but that goes back to species divergence in brain function. When your brain's been functioning in a dishonorable way for generations, thousands and thousands of years, okay, you become an inferior species to a martial artist who's been righteous, from a long righteous line, which is me, right? So we see this huge divergence, which is part of why they fume and poison me, and that goes back to the crown of thorns. Okay, the thorns and the rose, right? The rose and the cross. The rose was a symbol in the Roman pagan system, okay, in the Greek system of secret society reproduction, secret pagan cult reproduction. Okay, look it up if you don't believe me. Right? It's a symbol of a secret passion for somebody, for secret sex. Okay, for cult sex. Right? Secrete. Right? Secretion. Secrete, the location where the Philistines and so on. The Philistines and the other tribes in the Bible, the other groups in the Bible, are very much a part of the Roman Empire, and they're very much integrated in it. Rome was an empire that included all kinds of Thracians and all kinds of people, and some of them were these Philistine guys. Some of them were, the Amorites and whoever else who was in the area of the Jews, right? The Jews weren't the only people that were occupied by the empire, and they weren't the only people that, Rome was a huge trade center, and a lot of these people had founded their cults there, right? Zeus is a Greek form of Baal, who some of these people worship, right? The Baals, right? You have El, Baal, Dagon, these deities that they're worshiping, Nebo, and so on and so forth. Okay, and before that, these things had been derived, right? That had evolved from Enki and the Enlil and the Sumerian deities, as the story goes. And you see the white supremacists, the Jewish supremacists, LGBT people worshiping these deities openly these days, Enki and Enlil and Tiamat. I'd imagine they worship and the Anu, right? We talk about the Anunnaki, right? It goes back to that, I believe, a Sumerian deity, Anu, and so on and so forth. Okay, and I talked about these things in some of my older videos. It's been a while. All right, so that's we'll just end it there with this is part 2 of Luke 22. All right.